Marcus C. Williams here. Now, usually we do a little bit of a entrance timer countdown, but some people have said, well, what with the entrance timer can you do to get it down? I think we're going to probably bring it back, but I figured I'd say, hey, let's test it out and see how it works out tonight. So, as you know, we've got a lot of news going on right now, and it's been quite a few days since I dropped a news video. So we're going to do a couple of quick things through the news really quickly because there's just so much going on and there's a lot of really important topics to cover. So I'm going to do my best to go as in-depth as possible on the very important things and how they'll affect you coming up soon. And I'll do my best to make sure that I get a chance to go through all of the topics that we've got for tonight. So let's get into it. Boom. So I know a lot of you guys have seen what's going on with the banks across the nation and what just happened with Signature Bank in New York and what happened with SVB in Silicon Valley. So those were very serious collapses in which the federal government stepped in and took over these two banks. They took over the banks because the banks in America honestly, in most of the westernized society, use what they call fractional reserved banking, where basically they take your money in and then they loan your money out to somebody else immediately. Like they don't keep the money in the bank. If you go to the bank tomorrow and you have $1 million in your account, it won't be there. They'll have to try to get it ordered in. It'll be a problem and all of that. As a matter of fact, I've heard people even try to deposit large sums of money and it's a problem for them as well. Just for different reasons and stuff like that. So the fractional reserve system that we have in America is pretty jacked up. What the banks do is they buy treasury bonds. And with the treasury bonds, they're based on whatever the interest rate is at the time that they're issued. So for instance, right now, the Federal Reserve has continued to raise interest rates. So now when you try to cash in a bond that you got, like, let's say a year ago, the bond would be worth less. So you'll have to sell that bond at a steep discount, which is what happened in the case of Signature Bank and Silicon Valley Bank. They sold it in Silicon Valley Bank, they sold it at a 20% loss for billions of dollars worth of bonds that they tried to turn into the Federal Reserve. So you got to understand that amount of money, like, let's say you had $4 billion that you needed to cash out, and then they take away, then you lose 20% on $4 billion. That's like losing $1 billion, basically. You know what I'm saying? So it's very, very serious. And that's what led to the collapse of these banks, where the federal government had to step in. The Federal Reserve took them over. And it's really, honestly, very serious. Now, with what the Federal Reserve did when they took them over, they said, oh my goodness, we might have other issues with other banks. And there were a lot of warning signs that were flashing on other banks. And I'll give you this little note here. Silicon Valley Bank was the 16th largest bank in the nation when it collapsed. So that's something to think about. With that being said, we've got other banks that seem to be in possible issues and trouble and stuff like that. So what the federal government said is that, hey, listen, if you have issues with bonds, then you come to us and you can take out a loan from us, and then you can get that loan to cover the difference or whatever the case is. Now, think about that. If that's not some crazy loan sharking stuff, I've never heard of it before. That is extremely crazy loan sharking. Basically, what happened is Federal Reserve issued the bonds, right? So the bonds are worth less now. So the Federal Reserve is like, listen, you can borrow some more money for me, but you're going to have to pay me interest on that also. That's insane. That's a second loss of money, and who knows if they'll ever recoup the loss from the original stuff. All of this has snowballed into something that's extremely concerning, and more people should be paying attention. That's why I'm attempting to deliver this message to you guys specifically on this topic. When we look at what's happening, this is another bank bailout. That's exactly what's happening. Federal Reserve Chairman Powell has said that the federal government has basically, well, not the federal government, the Federal Reserve, which is kind of separate, which also works in tandem with the Treasury. So basically, he's saying that the Treasury, it's a little bit convoluted, but you get the general concept. So the Federal Reserve is basically saying they can print out as much money as they want, okay, at the US Treasury, and the Federal Reserve can distribute it however they want. Now, this is concerning because, as we know, we've seen this over the last 3 years, where they start issuing and increasing the amount of currency in circulation that deflates our money. That inflates our money. When it inflates our money, that means that your dollar is worth less, almost worth less. The words ring true, whether they're separate or they're combined. And this is a very serious issue because if you go out and you try to buy things, now your purchasing power is less. So, like, let's say, for instance, a quarter 3 years ago was worth a quarter, and now a quarter now is worth less. Call it 15 cents, and I'm over exaggerating on the amount. Honestly, not really. Honestly, I'm not. Because our value of dollars has been devalued greatly if you look at the common purchase of products and the general products versus the price. What happens with inflation is when the Federal Reserve raises rates and stuff like that, you end up having issues with costs of goods, because what they're doing is essentially, when they're putting in these rate increases, they're making it so that stuff is more expensive for you to purchase so that you spend more of your savings. And that is a serious issue for everybody that has savings, everybody that has a pension, everybody that has a retirement account, anybody that has any type of things like that. So that's something that's very, very serious that needs to be actually conceptualized in your head. Now, with the bank bailout that they've just done, they just printed a ton of extra money. All that's going to do is serve is to inflate our dollar even more and make your dollar worth less even more. And this is going to have a huge impact on everyone, every single individual in this country, because what's going to happen is we're going to see increases in costs on common goods, increases on costs on properties, increases in costs on mortgages. Basically, essentially, people are being priced out of their everyday life, and don't even talk about being able to purchase a home with these continued rate increases and the inflation, because you've got the two problems at one time. You've got the cost of a mortgage goes up, and you've got now the price of housing is going up. But at the same time, your value of your dollar is less. So you can't buy as much with your dollar as you could have before. And then you're going to have to pay back essentially what would be more for a less valuable dollar. Now, that is something that is limiting people's ability to buy houses and purchase houses and buy homes and really live the American dream, which is to buy your house, have your own, So that's something that we all should be very, very thoughtful of in our minds to think about. And this is something that's going to impact everybody. So I want to make sure that I bring that to your attention. I also wanted to talk about some serious other issues that we have that are going on with the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve just launched FedNow, the FedNow app. It's going to be coming out in July, I believe. And what the FedNow app will do is it'll allow you to actually transmit money to people instantly. Okay. But when you transmit money instantly to people, all of your transactions will be able to be tracked by the government immediately. So that's something that's very, very, very serious. I see you, Chris. What about rebuild an empire in July? Anything goes. It's very interesting, the direction that we're going right now, honestly, Chris. So with them introducing the FedNow, this basically is the immediate jump into CBDC, central bank digital currency, the digital dollar concept, because the government is going to be controlling all of the money. They control all of the money transfers. They know all of your purchases. They know everything that's going on all at one time. This is something that people need to be aware of, and they need to be wary of, because I don't know if you trust the government, but if you trust the government, you are too trusting. So any good person, any good American knows that you do not trust the government of the United States of America. You just don't. I love my country. Okay. Nobody can tell me anything wrong about my country, but the government is not to be trusted. That's very clear, plain, and simple, especially when they're passing laws and telling you that it's good for you, especially when it gives them more control over your money or does stuff which impacts your other rights. And speaking of other rights, let's get into there was a judge the other day. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I want to say it's Collins, but that might not be his name. Anyway, it doesn't matter. A federal judge. He was at Stanford, and basically what happened when he was at Stanford, he was at a Federalist Society event. They brought him in to speak at a law school. This is a law school, right? So they brought him in to speak. You know, he's a judge and he's trying to speak, and there are all types of crazy hecklers there, and they're acting a raw riot. And then they had the DIE, the Diversity, Inclusion, and Equity Dean was up there and ramrodded him verbally for 6 minutes. It's crazy, you know, like we're supposed to have free speech in America on campuses. A federal judge, you know, this is a law school. This is inappropriate. This is inappropriate completely. And it shows how and I hate to say it like this, but this is what it is. This shows how the more extreme elements of the left and of the leftist Democrats are actually doing everything that they can to pervert and limit people's freedoms and liberties. This is something that needs to be paid attention to. Very, very serious. You look at the issues that we're having with free speech everywhere, where it's like they can speak, but if you have a difference of opinion, you can't speak. And they'll do whatever they can to shout you down or disrupt your event or whatever the case is. And this is a very serious issue. We also saw the same type of a situation, but even worse, at UC Davis at a Charlie Kirk event the other day. So shout out to my friends at UC Davis over there. But the event was crazy because they tried to start the event and they got all these Antifa protesters coming in, smashing up windows, breaking up stuff, okay, destruction of property to prevent this man from speaking there. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard Charlie Kirk speak before. He's pretty all right, honestly. He's pretty all right, you know. He's out of all of the people who are more concerned about the direction our country is going, he's pretty all right when he speaks, and he's pretty open and everything, and is willing to take questions and all of that. And this is the type of dialogue that is actually needed to be had in the nation that's going in the direction that we are, which is down the drain because people refuse to have conversations. But these people that are acting out like they're activists, many of them that don't even attend the school, and that others that are promoting this insanity are working to limit people's rights, liberties, and freedoms by hearing somebody else speak. But they wouldn't like that if somebody did it to them. Now, this is a very serious issue that does need to be addressed because it continues to go into our every fabric of society. And that, my friends, is a very serious issue. Drink water, stay hydrated. So along with that type of situation that we have going on, while the country is deteriorating, we've got all of these people that are making it so that you can't speak freely. And if you stand up, they'll try to choke you out or blacklist you or do whatever they can to make it so that your voice isn't able to be heard if it's not whatever the narrative of today is. We as individuals, as Americans, need to stand up and say this is not something that's acceptable. It doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on, right, left, center, libertarian, it does not matter, okay? This type of action is not okay. When it is an open event at a campus and it's an event that's discussing very pertinent issues and matters, and it's a free speech event, right? Like, people should be able to have free speech. But if you want to come in there and you want to tell somebody to kill their babies, or you want to tell somebody to make sure that they mutilate children and stuff like that, that's okay. That's okay for these people. That's okay for these insane individuals who want to perpetrate this nonsense, you know? And they do it because they are sick in the head. Something is wrong with them. Something is seriously wrong with you if you believe that the same people that are for cutting up children's bodies right now in the name of gender identity or whatever it is this Tuesday that they're calling it are the same people that are like, oh, we're against female genital mutilation. Really? How? Because you're doing worse here. This is like way worse. Like, it's just, you make it make sense to me, you know? Like, where is your line? What do you stand for, really? And this is part of the serious part of the conversation that people don't want to have because they're scared to have it, because they're scared to talk about it, because they're scared of the repercussions of actually having that level of conversation, even though the majority of the people in the United States of America aren't for this nonsense. But when you're shutting out people's ability to speak freely, you need to look at any individual that's trying to shut down somebody's free speech and have some real serious questions for them. And you should probably push back against them. I don't want to really harp on that too much because I've really got a lot to say on it, and I got a couple of other pieces of news I want to get to. Like, we've got the governor of the United States. Lord bless, no. Whew. Okay, absolutely not. We've got the high priestess Kathy, governor of New York State, who's working to implement a health and human service regulation where they can put you in internment camps. That is a very serious issue that is happening. It was a court ruling that it was unconstitutional. She just appealed that. Why would you appeal internment camps? That's a problem. You want internment camps? That's insane. And I could talk about that for hours because we worked to fight to push back against that last year, because it started out as a bill, A416, which was an internment camp bill for New York State, with very foggy language that got stricken out of the assembly. And then she tried to push it through health and human service regulations. And then that got struck down in court, thanks to a couple of senators, some other people, and some very brave lawyers. Appreciate you guys very much. But it's ridiculous that this is what's going on right now in New York State. We have Joe Biden, who wants to take everybody's guns now. He just put an executive order, which is absolutely insane that he's able to do this. There needs to be lawsuits immediately against this dude. He put in an executive order, basically trying to make it so that it lays the groundwork for a national firearms registry, so that they know all the guns that you have, what you're buying, what you're purchasing, who you are, where you live, all of these things in a national registry. This is extremely dangerous because that means when they, as we know, and if you don't know this, this is a real thing. Joe Biden was working in tandem with the ATF and the FBI to figure out how to get all the gun stores in the United States to close down. So now we've got laws that they're working on, like in California, where they're trying to make it so it's legal to sue the gun manufacturers to push even more gun stores to close. Look what's happened in New York State with all the gun store closures, even the gun manufacturer closing plants in New York State over the last 10, 15 years. It's a lot of stuff going on, and they're doing everything that they can to restrict your ability to defend yourself from the government, because that's why the Second Amendment is there. Okay, in case of tyrants seizing power, which we have right now, we've got tyrants running our country. Okay, the elitists, okay, are running our country, and they don't want you to be able to protect or defend yourself. And that's why they're doing their best to strip down the Second Amendment. And it's crazy, right? Because as they're working to get rid of the Second Amendment and your ability as a law-abiding citizen to be able to protect yourself, they're letting the criminals run wild. You make it make sense. And they use the criminals that are committing acts of violence with firearms as an excuse to take you or your legal rights as a law-abiding citizen. This is a very serious issue, and it needs to be addressed. More people need to be attentive, and more people need to stand up and pay attention. It's time for people to start speaking up. We've got all types of other stuff going on with Biden doing that, talking about he's a president. Like, the president swears to uphold the United States Constitution. He's very clearly in violation of his. I mean, listen, that commitment to uphold the U.S. Constitution is very, very important. It's an oath that he has taken many times because he's been in Congress for decades. He's been in Congress longer than I've been alive. Okay. This is very serious. So for him to go against the U.S. Constitution is very problematic. More people need to pay attention to it. And it's not about your thoughts or your feelings or what you think is best. We have the United States Constitution, not to give us laws, but to protect our God-given rights. That's why we have the Constitution. This is something that a lot of people don't talk about, don't know about, but this is the reason why we have them. Okay, that's what makes us a republic and not a democracy, which is another lie that they'll try to sell you, that we're a democracy. America is not now, nor has it ever been a democracy. It has always been a republic. If you want, you can say a constitutional republic. If you want, you can call it a representative republic. Both are accurate, but it has never been a democracy. But that's the lie that they'll tell you, and they'll keep selling you, because the more that they hammer that home and use that word, the more that they can craft your mind into thinking that we are something that we're not. It's very, very serious, the time that we're in, and we need to have more people to wake up and be attentive to what's actually going on. Now, we also have what's going on in Ukraine. I don't know if you guys caught it yet, but we had a very serious military incident the other day. Now, you're going to have to ask yourself a couple questions here. First question. Ukraine is right on the verge of the Black Sea, right? The United States doesn't have any ships in the Black Sea, but there was a U.S. Reaper drone, the Reaper drone, the one that blows stuff up really good. There's a U.S. Reaper drone that's flying in the Black Sea right near Russian territory and spying on the Russians and their military stuff, right? Now, the U.S. is officially not supposed to be being involved in anything like that. So the Russians sent 2 jets to harass the unmanned aerial vehicle. So I guess they dumped fuel on it a couple times, and they tried to encourage it to get out of the area, right? So now we've got the actual drone, how it ended up crashing is up to interpretation. I'm using quote fingers if you're just listening to the audio, but how it ended up crashing is up to interpretation. But it crashed in the Black Sea, and again, there are no U.S. ships there, so honestly, what is it got business doing there in the first place? But that's another conversation. But it crashed, and the Russians are saying that they're going to go pick it up out the water, even though it's like 5,000 meters down or whatever they said that it was. 500 feet. I don't even know, 5,000 feet, something like that. It's deep down there. It crashed. But here's the deal. We didn't have any business doing that really to begin with, and that's part of the problem that pissed the Russians off. I don't care how you feel about Russia. I don't care how you feel about Ukraine. I don't care how you feel about the U.S. military. What we were doing was out of sorts, and we didn't have no real business, so we can't really be mad at what happened. However, I guess you could, but you shouldn't be. So we had Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and a couple other people parade through the press conferences yesterday and today, talking about, oh, Russia's not nice, they're mean. And we got Lindsey Graham, or was it Lindsey Graham? Yeah, it's Lindsey Graham. I can't stand him. Lindsey Graham getting on the TV talking about, oh, we should go blow Russia up because that's what Ronald Reagan would do. No, the fuck, Ronald Reagan wouldn't do that. Excuse my language. No, he wouldn't do that. Because he's not stupid, and he's not that type of an individual like Lindsey Graham is. And Mitch McConnell, while we're at it, freaking crazy people. And I'm a war hawk. Like, I like the concept of that. But this is not the war that we need to have. And it would not be good for us. Mainly, my first concern and my first priority is the American people and their safety. Not only their safety as in physical safety, but also their safety as in trade routes, as in being able to source materials, as in being able to feed our nation and have energy security. A war with Russia would destroy all of these very quickly. It would be a problem. So it's not realistic to say that that's something that we should do or even get involved in. And Poland's trying to escalate the tensions too. Now they're talking about they're going to send some MiGs, these are jets, they're Russian model jets, over to Ukraine. But I heard a little while ago, and I hope the person misspoke, that they're going to send F-16s to Ukraine. That'd be a big problem. That'd be a big problem if they did that. We have some serious issues, and we are on the verge of a very serious war. It's only funny that all of this sudden we got all this stuff coming out. Like, we now have information proving that January 6th didn't happen the way that they told us. We got issues with all of these train derailments and chemicals going into the world. We've got issues knowing that we blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which is creating an ecological disaster, which none of these green people are even talking about. But, that makes too much sense to talk about the important things. So with that being said, we've got all of these issues going on that are about to lead us directly into World War III, and we need to prevent and stop that as much as possible. Plus, we got China banging on Taiwan, talking about we're coming 4 years behind, period. And the U.S. is like, yeah, we'll help back Taiwan up. I don't believe you. I don't believe anybody in America that says that they're going to help back up Taiwan. I do not believe you, not even one little bit. Last month, China cut the undersea cables to Taiwan, which basically are how you get your internet anywhere in the world, because those are the ones that have the fastest speed and capacity and stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. China cut them. It'll take months, maybe another 6 to 8 months before they're able to get them repaired, because there are only certain specialized ships that can do that in the world. But China knows this. So that's something that we need to have on our alert and guard. And they keep testing the Taiwanese airspace and their, I don't know what you call the water space, but that too, I'm not able to remember. But they're testing that too, and they're testing them to see what's going on. They're flying drones all over Taiwan. It's out of control. It is a very serious flashpoint, honestly. We're about to go to war over there too, and we are not able to fight a war on two fronts. We're like, oh, well, we're over there. We're weakening Russia in Ukraine, and no, we're not. No, we're not. All of the moves that we've made thus far to try to limit Russia's ability to get funds and do different things and stuff like that have actually empowered Russia. They've made the Russian ruble worth way more than it was before the world got involved with Russia and Ukraine. So now the Russians' money is worth more than what it was before the start of the war. That's something that we did. Now Russia and China are building a whole parallel economic infrastructure and financial infrastructure to be used by many other countries. Look at Saudi Arabia and Iran are back working together thanks to China, which is another scary thought right there. And now China's trying to do other stuff in the rest of Eurasia and stuff like that. It is a very serious problem. We are taking this issue too lightly, and we need to pay more attention to what's actually going on. And as Americans, I encourage you all to see this for what it is. Not only is it a way to basically deflate our money and launder money in Ukraine, but we know that the money is never going to get to the Ukrainian people, and it's mostly going to go to the big, large mega corporations that we have that are American companies anyway. And the people of Ukraine will get nothing, and Zelensky will get billions of dollars himself and probably a private island. But the people will get nothing. They'll see nothing. And I hate to say it, and I know nobody wants to really admit this, Ukraine's going to lose. Ukraine's going to lose. They just don't have the numbers. They do not have the numbers. And when it comes to any type of warfare, it always boils down to the numbers. They can't keep up at the rate that they're losing people. So that scary part is that Ukraine did used to have nuclear weapons. Russia's already said multiple times that they are concerned that Ukraine is going to use biological weapons or nuclear weapons if they see that there is going to be a definitive loss there. And that's a rightful concern, because Ukraine has had nukes and stuff like that in the past, and there are loose nukes all over the place in Europe. So it's very largely a possibility, but more so over than that. We know that they had biolabs in Ukraine. We know that they had biolabs. America helped them destroy the laboratories and the information inside the laboratories. We know that. So who's to say that they wouldn't launch some sort of a chemical or biological attack? And then they'd probably blame it on the Russians, because that's what you do. These are things that we really need to be paying attention to that can be extremely and aggressively detrimental to us in the future. And when I mean in the future, I mean in the near future. So we've got all of this going on. And in the meantime, we got the whole, basically, the border is open, letting all types of criminals and everybody through, and terrorists too, from all different countries. We got a lot of issues right now that need to be addressed. I saw today the agricultural was it the agricultural secretary who said it? One of the senators, not the agricultural secretary, but it was an agricultural committee meeting. I saw that this morning. They were like 90% of farmers have lost money over the last couple of years. They said 50% lost money on their farms, and another 40% didn't make any money on their farms, but they made money from outside activities instead of on their farms. So that means 90% of the farmers in America are in trouble and in peril. So this is something that we really need to be paying attention to. These are issues that people don't talk about. I talk about it because I like food. I like to eat. You know what I'm saying? I like to be able to eat and access food. But if we don't stand up and push back against what's going on in our nation right now, we're going to lose everything. And we need to focus on so many things. But now the Pentagon and the FBI is like, there may be a UFO mothership in our solar system that's sending out probes to probe Earth. Man, if you don't get that nonsense out my face, okay? Aliens are here. Of course they are. That's just ridiculous to think otherwise, okay? Is there an alien mothership in the solar system right now? Probably not, honestly. Probably not. But they'll try to make you think that is a thing so that they can distract you from everything else. They'll probably even stage a fake alien invasion. You know what I'm saying? That'll be a thing to try to unify everybody and hasten everybody to move towards one world order and give up all their rights and freedoms. And this is how they operate. So mark my word on that. It's coming. They're already trying to get rid of the Lord. So it's very, very serious. So watch what's going on. Be wary, be attentive, and stand up and speak up, and don't shut up. Stay strong, take action. I'll catch you guys later. Be blessed and be well.